Hi guys. Alright, so if you've noticed, I haven't been around that much lately because I have been completely taken over and obsessed with Octopath Traveler. I was in the middle of playing Quest for Glory 3, and hold on, I gotta turn this down. Even though I don't want to. I was in the middle of playing Quest for Glory 3, which honestly I was kind of having a hard time with. And a friend of mine, Rich, told me about this game. And I'm gonna do like a little explanation as to where I've been, and also kind of like a little review. Still too loud. But honestly, I really love so many things about this game, and it's coming out a little late because the game came out about exactly a month ago. But I wanted to make sure that I played pretty much the whole game. I haven't finished it yet, but I've played enough of it to feel like I can give a review. Octopath Traveler is a game that is exclusively on Nintendo Switch that was made by Square Enix, one of my favorite JRPG companies. Most famously basically for games like Final Fantasy and stuff like that. They were in their heyday back in the mid to late 80s and early 90s. Made games like Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Super Mario RPG, Valkyrie Profile, stuff like that. But I haven't really played like a Square game in a long time because I was never really overly obsessed with Final Fantasy. To tell you the truth, the last Final Fantasy game, other than the last one, I played the last one like a little bit. But other than the last one, I got just because same friend, Rich, basically told me, he's like, oh, you gotta get it. What I did was, I'm sorry, what the last one I played was Final Fantasy VI, which the graphics in this game are very, very similar to. And I'll get into that in a second. But this is the first Switch game that I've ever played that I've actually been walking around, finding myself sitting in cars and playing mobily, like a lot. And I don't know if it's because of the graphic aspect of the game. The last Switch game that I put a ton of hours into was Breath of the Wild. Now, while that graphics aren't state of the art in Breath of the Wild, I did feel kind of compelled to play that game while the Switch was in the dock and see it on the big screen, because I'm a huge Zelda fan and I really like enjoying the graphics, and it was my first playthrough, so there was a lot of reasons why I wanted to play it. Plus, I just like controllers. I think controllers are great. But there was something about this game that I didn't care if I was just holding the Switch, laying in bed, sitting in the backyard, in a car. Didn't matter. And I think part of that is just like, whatever, the graphics aren't, pushing the boundaries of the processor, so it's like I'm not really missing out for any details because the screen is smaller than my 50-inch flat screen. And like I was gonna say, I'll get to the graphics in a second, but just to mention, the graphics are extremely similar to like a high-end Super Nintendo game, so like Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy 3/6, depending on what you call it. But here's just a general review of the game. It's called Octopath Traveler, and like I said, it's on Switch, and it's an exclusive. It's made by Square Enix, and you start off the game in a world called Ostera. I think it's a continent actually called Ostera, and you have the choice of 8 different characters, and that's why it's called Octopath. And later on, I found out there's a second reason it's called Octopath, and this blew my mind. And I had to write this down, or else I wasn't gonna remember. Okay, so there's 8 characters in the game, and there's Ulbrich, and he's a warrior, and there's Cyrus, and he's a scholar, and then there's Therion, or Therion, not sure how to say that, and he's a thief. And then there's Ophelia, and she's a priest, cleric, healer. And there's Primrose, she's like a dancer. There's Alphen, and he's an apothecary, medicine man, doctor, whatever. And there's Tressa, and she's a merchant, you know. And the last character is, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, Hanet, and she's like a hunter. And I have them in that order because at one point in the game I realized there's 8 characters, Octopath is an 8-letter word, and it's actually the first letter of each character's name spells out the word Octopath, and I was just like totally mind blown. Yeah, so like Ulbrich O, Cyrus C, Therion T, Ophelia O, and Primrose, Alphen, Tressa on it, and I was just like, wow, that's really cool. They had to do that on purpose. I should look that up. I'm not really sure, but that can't be a coincidence. So, okay, full review of the game itself now. So whatever character you choose in the beginning of the game becomes your main character, and they're locked into the first person slot, first character slot, and you're gonna have to use them the whole game, which is fine. I chose Ulbrich because I figured, hey, he's a warrior, he'll be the easiest to play. Historically, through my time playing video games, I've found that anything other than a character that just beats people over the head is hard to deal with. So I didn't want to test myself too much. Then, basically, as you progress through the game, you find the rest of the characters. I didn't have a hard time finding any of the characters. Except for the last character, I didn't have a hard time finding the character, I just had a hard time finding the village they were in. Or rather, the route to the village they were in. And that last character, I think, was Therion. Or Therion, whatever. Still don't know how to say it. Then, I found out, I found out right away when I got Ulbrich that he has a special ability, which is he can challenge people. So if you're in town and you walk up to a village person, you can walk up to them and there's like a little icon of 2 crossed swords, and you can basically walk up to them and throw down the gloves, so to speak, and you can just kind of be like, listen, mother friender, let's fight. And it'll tell you with like a certain number of diamonds, like how strong they are, and that kind of gives you an idea of how difficult they're going to be to defeat. So I think that each diamond is roughly equivalent to 5 of your levels, because I'm close to level 60 now with Ulbrich, and I've had him defeat somebody with max diamonds, and I think there's about 10 diamonds, I think. But I've made him super overpowered. I've given him every possible thing I can give him, whereas I didn't have to. I probably could have spread everything out across the other 8 characters, but I'll get into more of that. Anyway, so that's Ulbrich's special. They're called path abilities. His path ability is that he can challenge people, which means that you can basically choose when you don't fight with him and you can gain experience even when you're in towns, which is really cool. And there's still random battles when you're outside of towns, but being inside of a town basically means you just throw down with anybody, and I think that's pretty cool. Whereas other characters, for the most part, can't. For the most part, it's one other character that can do that, and I'll talk about her in a minute. So Cyrus, you meet him, and his ability is actually twofold. He has a thing called, not Inquire, it's Scrutinize. Now, it's kind of circular, and I think they kind of made dual character archetypes. So he's kind of a lot like the Apothecary Alphen, and their two abilities are similar. And his is called Scrutinize, which means that if you walk up to a random NPC, that you have a certain percent chance to extract information of them that can help you. And sometimes the information is nothing and it's just like a little bit of interesting story to read, or sometimes it's something that'll actually help you in the game. Like, you'll walk up to a character and it'll be like, you have a 72% chance to glean some information from this character. Do you want to proceed? And you'll be like, yeah, sure, roll the dice. And if you succeed, then that information might actually get you something helpful in the game, like a discount at the inn, or unlock more items at the weapon shop, which is helpful. Sometimes it'll unlock a secret item in the game. Like, so when you're just walking through the town, you'll see like a little glint or a sparkly item, and you pick it up and you can add it to your inventory, which is cool. The second thing Cyrus does is he kind of does research on the enemies that you fight in the game. And this kind of goes more into the battle system, but just to finish up Cyrus, every character, or I keep saying character, every enemy in the game has weaknesses. Some have as many as like 6, 7 weaknesses, and some only have like 1 or 2. But usually it'll be like an elemental weakness and a weapon type weakness. So let's say you're fighting like a frog. The frog might be weak to fire and spears, but you don't know until you use them, unless you're using Cyrus. And sometimes as you're getting into the encounter, Cyrus will like say something and he'll be like, I've done my research, and then it'll usually reveal one of the things that the enemy is weak to, which I think is really cool. Then the next character is Therion. I'm not doing this in any particular order. And Therion is actually one of my favorite characters. Therion is the thief, and he is, you know, kind of like a dark and shady character, not the, you know, the kind of like a loner, I guess. I mean, he's not a bad character or a bad person. I personally love him, and the reason I love him is because one of his path actions is that he can steal. His ability lets him walk up to random NPCs, and the same way you have a percent chance of scrutinizing a character in town with Cyrus is that Therion can walk up to somebody and there's like a little glove or a hand, and you can walk up and you could say steal, and they'll be like, oh, do you want to steal from this person? You have a 58% chance of succeeding. I always try. Now, just so you know, if you fail to scrutinize or use a path action, you lose favor in that town. And when you walk into the town, you have 4 attempts to do anything you want that you could lose favor in before your reputation goes to crap. When your reputation goes to crap, you basically have to go to the town bar and pay off the bartender, and what he does is he spreads good rumors about you, and then you can go back to doing whatever you want. But when your reputation has gotten bad, you can't talk to anybody, you can't try and do any path actions, and you're kind of screwed. The only thing you can do is sleep in the inn or buy items. I never let it last very long because usually if I've lost reputation in a town, it's because I was still at the point where I'm trying to get items. But that's Therion's ability. I tried to make my Therion in my game very sneaky. I gave him as much evasion as I could, so even though his defense isn't really high, I just had him dodge and dip and duck everything. Anyway, Ophelia is the next character, and if it wasn't for the fact that she was a healer, she would be my least favorite character, because her story is boring and she does no damage at all with either her magic or her physical attacks. So Ophelia, you get 1 thumbs down. There's another character that gets 2 thumbs down, but whatever. There's 8 characters, so I can't complain. It's not a perfect game, but I'll get to an overall rating at the end. Ophelia is, like I said, she's a priestess or a healer or a cleric, whatever you want to call her, and her path action is a thing called guide, which I don't really use unless it's integral to the story and they basically make you guide somebody. Now, before I complete the game 100%, I am going to go back and I'm going to look online and see, like, well, what happens if I guide somebody? Are there people to guide to do something or unlock things? Because I never guide anyone. Like, I don't see any incentive to it. Like, if I guide somebody, what happens? And I don't think you can fail. If you walk up to somebody and you use the little guide icon, which is kind of like a little angel with wings, they just follow you. And that's it. Like, I don't know what else there is to do. I'll try it again, but I don't think there's any benefit to guiding somebody other than just to have a random person follow you around. But Ophelia is the healer, and she does have some benefits. She can do a mass heal to the entire party, and she does have the ability to heal herself beyond her max HP, which is good. So the next character I'll go over is Primrose. And she is absolutely my least favorite character. However, her story is more interesting than Ophelia's. She is the character that has the darkest story, and that kind of shocked me the most of all the characters in this game. There's some language in this game that I've never seen in a Square Enix game before. There is a point where there are like some pimps that just blatantly call Primrose a whore multiple times, and I was like, wow, this game's definitely aimed at adults, and I think that's kind of indicative of the visual style of the game, because if you played Final Fantasy 3, 6, whatever, they know that if you were around in 1995 when that game came out, you were probably anywhere between, like, 10 years old and 20 years old, so let's average that around 15. So, let's say you were born in 1980, now you're almost 40, so probably going to be playing this game. So I think they were a little lenient with the language. And there's some other things they say too, other characters, that I was kind of like, oh, I'm surprised they said that. But I'll get back to more of that. Primrose is a dancer, and she is kind of just a support character. She has all different types of dances that buff your speed, buff your strength, buff your defense. She has one magic dance that attacks and does some dark element damage. But for the most, she has one dance that's random. Like, literally it's random. No matter how many times you do it, it's always going to have a random effect. I hardly ever use that. She does very little physical damage. She uses daggers. I forgot to go over that, by the way. But you know what? I'll get to that later. And that's Primrose. Her character story arc is kind of a story of redemption. I sense a little social justice warrior in her too. Maybe that's another reason I'm turned off by her. because she kind of like seems a little against men. Like her whole story arc is kind of like men are evil and I don't need men. But I really tried to just stay objective and not be too politically reading into this game. Anyway, then there was, who's next? Alphen. I like the Alphen character. I liked him a lot. He's the apothecary, the healer, medicine man, whatever you want to call him. And he is another character who I wasn't 100% sure if I was doing everything right, because he has this ability to heal, so he can use first aid, and he also has an axe, so he's kind of well-rounded. He does a lot of physical damage, and he can also heal, and he also has some magic, but he has an ability called Concoct, which allows you to take ingredients that you find, like you find all these seeds and all these other things, and while you're fighting a battle you can kind of like mix them together and they have effects on your opponent. And I tried it a couple of times early in the game, but I found that they had very weak effects, so I stopped doing it. So there might be a table or a chart online that I can refer to see what has the best benefits and effects, but I was kind of scared to go back and waste more ingredients because they didn't seem to do anything. Alphen's path action is Inquire, which is pretty much the same thing as Scrutinize, except it doesn't seem like when you inquire with Alphen that there's ever a chance to fail. Scrutinize is the one that you tend to run the risk of failing scrutiny. So Alphen's is just kind of like, you know, the friendly walk up to somebody and ask a question. And I totally missed Primrose's. Sorry. Primrose has something called Allure, which is similar to the guide one. Like I said, they kind of created characters in pairs. So before I move on, I just want to mention Allure. So if you're walking around town, you can kind of like walk up to somebody and you can just like blow them a kiss and they'll follow you. And yeah, and that's it. This is another one I don't do very often. I tend to use, you know, Challenge, I tend to use Inquire, Steal, Scrutinize, something that's going to give me something. I didn't really get what the point of Allure or Guide were. Sorry. Anyway, that was Alphen. Next is Tressa. I liked Tressa because she was another well-rounded character. She reminded me of Alphen, but I'll explain her in detail. You find her in a seaside town, and she's a merchant, and her specialty is bargaining and buying things. So you can go up to other NPCs, and let's say you have Therion in your party, and you're stealing, and you have 4 chances in a town, and you try 3 times to take something, and you fail. And then you know you're in a town where if you fail and lose reputation, it's going to cost you like 100 grand, because there is a town that's going to cost 100 grand to restore your reputation. Well, that's where Tressa comes in. If you don't have the money to restore your reputation, I usually make sure I do, because I really don't like paying for stuff. But Tressa then, being a merchant, can walk up to somebody and be like, hey, let me buy that off you. And on top of being able to just buy something off of somebody, she can also get discounts, which is good. And all the path actions, the more and more you talk to people, the better your abilities get. So as a thief, for example, the more you steal things and the more people that you talk to, the better your thieving gets and the more successful you'll be. Same with being, same with scrutinizing people, and the same with inquiring and guiding and do all of that stuff. So Tressa is really good in that respect. She has no real additional abilities in battle, other than, you know, she has some elemental skills and some other little tricks and support skills. But she's pretty good. The last character is the Hunter, Honnet, and she's cool. She's kind of like the female version of Ulbrich. She comes from this wild village, and she actually comes with a pet named Linda, or Lind. It's Linde, so I'm not sure how to say it. And she can challenge people, or as her character calls it, she can provoke people, and she can level up against NPCs in towns also. The only thing is, when she fights people in town, she can't use her special hunter abilities. She can only use her summon abilities. So Linda and anything else that she has in her summons. And the way you get summons is when you do fight outside of a town, one of her abilities is she can try and capture creatures. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think the higher level you are, the more likely it is that you'll be able to summon something. So, I'm sorry, capture something. So, if you're in a fight and, like, let's say you're level 1, you probably won't be able to capture a level 30 creature, but if you're fighting a level 30 creature and you're level 50, the easier it'll probably be to steal it. Also, if the creature is stunned or if its HP is low, Honnet seems to be more successful against creatures that are weakened. So usually I'll, you know, steal a whole bunch of creatures, have them in my back pocket, and I'll usually save them up for like when I fight a boss or something like that. And that's pretty much all the path actions and all the characters. Then there's jobs and skills. So, okay, that was the primary jobs of all the characters, right? But then there's 8 shrines out there that represent all of the jobs. So there's one for being a scholar, there's one for being, you know, a hunter, and so on and so forth for all the other jobs. And so once you go to all these shrines and you fight the bosses inside, what they do is they bestow to you, basically, the ability to have cross-hybrid classes. I think the first one I unlocked was the Apothecary, Shrine of the Healer, I think it's called. And because Ulbrich was my main character, I made him an Apothecary, which looking back was probably a good decision, because it's always good to have a healer in your party at all times. And then the second one I unlocked, I think, was either Thief or Dancer, I don't remember. I'm actually not done with the game yet, and I still don't have them all unlocked, because there is Shrine of the Archmagus, which is really hard. Like, the boss is mean. Like, really, really mean. Ulbrich's a high level in my game, but not everyone else, and they all get destroyed. And he is relentless, this boss. His name is Draysang, and he just demolishes you. Anyway, moving on. So, yeah. You get JP points in the game, and then that goes towards your skills. So, it was actually until I was almost like level 15 until I started realizing that my character has been doing the same attacks this entire time. I wonder why. And then I started playing around with the menus and I realized, oh shoot, I can take all these points that I have and put them into other abilities. And that was when I started really doing damage. I was pretty much using the same 2 skills the whole time. So other than jobs, there's skills that you unlock with JP points, and after that, and you equip new jobs that adjust the stats of your characters, and it also lets you use different weapons. So when the game starts, everyone has a default weapon. Ulbrich uses a sword, Cyrus uses a staff, Therion uses a dagger, Ophelia uses a staff, Primrose uses a dagger, Alphen uses an axe, Tressa think Tressa actually gets two. I think she starts with a spear and a bow, and Hannet uses... what does Hannet use? Hannet uses a bow also. You might start off with a spear and a sword, actually, for Ulbrich. But as you get more jobs, it unlocks other slots. Because like Ulbrich, right now, I know for a fact that he can use an axe also because he's an apothecary. And it's a lot of fun. But I'm going to talk about the graphics now. This game is made in something called 2D HD. So if you see the sprites, it's very reminiscent of like a Super Nintendo FF6 style game. And it's all pixelated. But if you look at the water is so detailed, and I realize nothing's moving, but it's just so good looking. And as you move, the smoky backgrounds and the layers on the layers just will disappear and reveal more. And everybody is so expressive in this game. Like the little blinking faces and how they nod and throw up their hands. Everything looks so great. I love the graphics. Like, you don't need to do anything for the graphics. I think it's perfect. Like, if graphics just stopped here, I would be happy. The music in this game is so perfect. It is classic but new, and it's so representative of the game that you're playing. I really couldn't be happier. This is why I've put over 140 hours into this game over the last month. That's almost a week straight of playtime. It's nuts. I think that this game is in dire need of a sequel or some kind of DLC. Online, I was reading that the game did not have plans for DLC, but I think that is a huge missed opportunity. And that's because the game has one fatal flaw. One tremendous, gashing flaw that makes the game fall short of being a masterpiece. And that is, every single character, their story is broken up into 4 chapters, right? So that means that Ulbrich has 4 chapters, Cyrus has 4 chapters, and every character has 4. So there's 32 chapters, okay? And that's great. The problem is that the chapters never come together. Never. You play 4 chapters of Ulbrich, okay? And then his story's done. You play 4 chapters of Cyrus, and then his story's done. Now, if you decide to play all the way through the game just with, Ulbrich, that's fine. And then the game's done. And he'll continue to be with the other characters, because they have like travel banter. Every now and then a little like plus icon will appear in the top, and you can hit the plus button, and they'll talk to each other. But other than the interact that they have as travel banter, they never really come together. And there's no overarching like villain or story or struggle that brings all the characters together. It's such a disappointment. For those of you who know Final Fantasy and Chrono Trigger and games like that, there was always some evil, bad guy, something that made, like, you had Lavos, or Kefka, or something. Like, something was there that took all of these heroes from different parts of the world and brought them together and made you care, like, oh, this is sick, and you got to see them all together. It's like when in a movie, and this is a terrible movie, but still, that money shot in Street Fighter 2, not 2, just Street Fighter, and they are all together. It's still a cool shot. It was like, oh man, you got to see all the Street Fighter characters. Or at the end of Mortal Kombat, oh, they were all together. Or in fucking Infinity War, you got to see all the characters just running at the screen in the trailer. But this is like, such a missed opportunity. What the hell were they thinking? Why would they individually build up and make you care about each of these individual characters, and they each have to fight their own fight. Like, it's like, alright, here's my struggle, I beat the bad guy, and here's mine, 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 and then that's it. Oh my god. I'm sorry. It's just a letdown. That's what makes me give this game a 7 out of 10. It's that important. It's like 3 whole points. Literally, everything else is perfect. The controls, the portability of it, the music, the characters, the graphics, everything is great. I love the battle system, that fact that every enemy is kind of like weak to a different thing. It's so good. But they never come together. I've literally just left my Switch on my lap at night and sat there and just listened to the music. That's how good it is. But they needed a big bad guy. They needed somebody that was there to kind of like kick dirt in their face and make them team up. Square Enix, you need to fix this problem. You really need to fix this. But that's all I'm going to say, guys. What did you think of Octopath Traveler? Have you played the game? If you haven't, and you're a big fan of JRPGs, please go get this. I don't care if you have to buy a Switch. This is the best game that I have played in years. I know it has one epic flaw, and I'm sorry, but it's still worth playing. You know, it's almost like, alright, I went into this, and I spoiled myself on a lot of things. I found out about this major flaw, but you know what? I didn't care, because the game is still so good, and I'm not even done with it yet. I put about 140 hours into it. I'll probably put another 60. The game is just that damn good. I'm a completionist. I like to do everything to its fullest. I'm looking forward to it. It's a great game, and I really hope they keep coming with the content. The next game that I'm going to play, well, I'm going to go back to Quest for Glory 3 after this, and then I might do 4 directly after that. I'm going to do 4 either way, but the next Switch game that I might play after Quest for Glory 3 is called Bloodstained. It's the spiritual successor to the Castlevania series, made by the same guy who created Castlevania, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I'll probably do a review of that also, guys. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, and I would really love to hear from you guys in the comments. Start shouting out. There's not enough going on in those comments. I realize that this channel is not pretty new, and I don't have a lot of subscribers, but hey, gotta start somewhere, alright? Have a good day, guys.